All right, that's wonderful. So that's where, but if David wasn't there, you could dispose of his stuff. So then they've got to dispose of it, and my theory is that they were flushing the tumors down the toilet. Pretty awful for the water supply of New Orleans. Okay, we're gonna...
We've got a little technical glitch here. We're gonna go and try to fix Jude, with it. We go with your computer. And we're gonna test the video, make sure it's going to work. You can see.
Yeah, I can't see it. My eyes are... my brain fills in a lot of stuff. I really don't see very much. So that helps, because I don't get scared of you. Okay, all right. Well, let's see if this works here, and because see if we have sound here. We have too much sound. There we go. Okay, hold on here, because I don't hear anything yet. Let's see what we have. Hold on, dears. You're asking me, and this is a new computer. I've had 3 computers in a row that were destroyed by TSA, and they leave their calling card. There we go. Okay.
So many of you all need to dispose of your computers, call TSA.
No, I did. I just put that. Yeah, we should have it now. Let's see. I don't hear a thing yet. No, we don't have it. Hold on here. No? All right, we're going to go on and we're going to try this video. I mean, this sound. Bring that sound man in here, wherever he is. But let's go on to our next person until this is fixed. How about you? Would you like to come up next? Come on, come on. I'm so grateful. These people, the poor things.
Just regarding Lee Harvey Oswald and his experience with Lee.
Okay.
So,
Yep, she was very beautiful.
Lee Oswald.
Okay, we're going to start this. You got a reprieve. Okay. See, I wanted that. One of the things I wanted, we wanted these.
What do you like?
I wanted to have.
We're here with Jim Batek.
Wanted very much to have all of you be able to come here and not only get information and research materials, because we are also a symposium, and the material we're giving you, we're trying to make it easy to digest. I don't think it's right that we always have to have solemnity and all that. We should rejoice that we still have witnesses come forward, that we can get justice for John F. Kennedy and for Lee Oswald as well. In fact, I'm hoping that some of you here will be joining us in what I call the Tippett Project. So as soon as this is over, anyone that comes to my desk, I'm going to give you a sign to hold on to all day. And this is a Tippett sign that Ferris Rookstool III put out there. He's an FBI guy, wrote the material that's on the Tippett sign, which is a conflict of interest. And it says, of course, right at this spot, Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed Officer Tippett. So Rookstool, the FBI agent, became the judge and jury for Lee Oswald. And they take the tour around. It only costs $1,200 to replace that bronze line plaque. And that's our goal. And I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for people to come and join me on Sunday night. That's all I want to say. Okay, thank you. Now this sound here is too loud. You can hear the background. There's a feedback in here.
Yeah, the mother's is from the cables. There's nothing I can do about that.
We didn't have that before, though.
That's because I had it off. There's no sound.
Okay. And now I'm going to reintroduce a young man. Come up here and give her a reprieve. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself, Ray?
Thanks, Judith. My name is Ray Hale. Whoa. And I'm here to talk about Lee Harvey Oswald and who he was as a person. I've read a lot of books over the years, and the 50th anniversary really disturbed me. All the footage, the TV shows, the articles, and most of what I was observing and watching, to me, was completely inaccurate of who he was. And I was angry. And so I went out and I started reading as many books as I could that were, whether you talk about him being guilty or innocent. And the guilty books, I just couldn't get through because the through line to all of them was a psychological profile that he was unstable. And that was clearly not the case. Captain Fritz, District Attorney Wade, Police Chief Curry, all said that he was not, and always polite to me and the other workers. I feel fortunate. I got to see a side of Lee that most people will never see. When you read about him, it's all terrible things. You don't get to hear or read about the good things. Lee was very good with children. I knew that because I had 3 young nieces living in the same house. They talked about him, they loved him, they called him Mr. Lee. And on Fridays, the neighborhood children would congregate around the Payne's front yard, around an oak tree, because that's the day when Mr. Lee would come visit. And the last one is from Marina Oswald Porter. She wrote a letter to the Assassination Record Review Board, I believe in 1992. And this is some of what she said in her letter. I definitely think that Lee Oswald did not kill President Kennedy. I think he was given up to pacify people as a patsy. I believe that Lee Oswald was an FBI informant. I request the full particulars in the original teletype received by Mr. William Walter in the New Orleans FBI office on the morning of November 17, 1963. Warning of a possible assassination attempt on President Kennedy in Dallas. I now believe that my former husband met with the Dallas FBI on November 16, 1963, and provided informant information on which this teletype was based. At the time of the assassination of this great president whom I loved, I was misled the evidence represented to me by government authorities, and I assisted in the conviction of Lee Harvey Oswald as the assassin. From the new information now available, I am now convinced that he was an FBI informant and believe that he did not kill President Kennedy. It is time for Americans to know their full history. That's Marina Oswald. You can find that online. It's really impressive. So really quickly, I tracked down a guy named Jim Botello. His name was mentioned in the books, and he was a former Marine. He was a roommate of Lee Oswald, and a former California judge. And he's ill right now, and I talked to him on the phone a few times, and I asked him if I could come to interview him, and he said sure, and went down there, and he had just taken a bad spill, and I said, you sure you want to do this? And he said, oh, I definitely want to do this. And so we put him on camera, and this is the interview. Hello, former U.S. Marine, police officer, and California judge. I was going to answer a few questions for us regarding Lee Harvey Oswald and his experience with Lee. So, when and where did you first meet Lee Oswald?
I met Lee Oswald back in 1957 when he transferred from the outfit that he was in Japan back to the United States. He happened to belong to the same outfit, Max and I, Marine Corps.
What was your impression of him, of who he was?
He was a very likable fellow, friendly. He was not overly aggressive or physically playful like a lot of the other Marines like to get.
Do some wrestling, yeah. And was he intelligent, did you think?
He's very intelligent. Though at the time it was believed that he didn't have a high school diploma, but that didn't show whatever.
And he was your roommate, correct?
Yeah, he was had natural intelligence. He was a great guy, I thought.
And did you think one of the things you mentioned to me on the phone, you told me that he had integrity more than most people. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, he did.
Was he a good roommate?
His best roommate I've ever had. He was being married a couple of times.
There you go. And one of the things you also told me was that you guys had a record player. You went and you bought some records together.
Yes, we did. we all didn't have television sets in our room, and so our entertainment was the record player that we had.
And you classical music?
We played classical music, a number of different troops. And his favorite seemed to be the 1812 Overture, as was mine,
Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky.
He went home with you.
Yeah.
You took him home to see your family.
Yeah, we'd travel in my car up here from Santa Ana and go to Liberty, and weekend we'd just head back to work at Tustin Air Base. We were stationed out there. He missed the last qualifying at the rifle range. He was made company clerk at the time, and which is interesting in itself, because they said his clearance was taken away. However, being a company clerk in our outfit, which was a headquarters outfit, we had all sorts of top secret information in the company office, and that's what he had access to.
So it was taken away, but in theory, he had access to all kinds of
In
information.
fact, the Warren report shows that he had a crypto clearance. That's what I was led to believe, and that's way higher than any clearance that I ever held.
So when you found out that he went to Russia and had defected, what were your thoughts on that?
I didn't believe it
You
instantaneously.
told me on the phone that traveling was for the rich, for the wealthy.
Exactly. Passports just weren't given to Russia. And you just couldn't get on a boat and sail to Russia and without some exceptional benefits being afforded you. And he certainly didn't have the money. I believe he is paid probably in the neighborhood of at the most probably $120 a month. And I think most of that money went to his mother in allotments. And so shortly after him getting out, it was quite obvious he didn't have the money, and he certainly didn't have the integrity to go out and hold up a gas station or rob a bank or do anything like that to obtain the money. So it appeared obvious to me that someone sent him there
On assignment
on assignment, right?
for more than likely U.S. intelligence. Do
Exactly.
you think that he was a loyal U.S. Marine?
Absolutely.
Do you know that the day of the assassination that he took off his wedding ring and he put on his Marine Semper ring?
I saw that in,
He wore it.
he didn't kill Kennedy. There was no question about that. And I don't know how or why anyone would want him to be blamed for it. All the terrible words that have been said about him are just certainly not true at all.
That Oswald's about. What's going through your head when you see that? At first, it's maybe grief for the country, and then confusion, or what were you thinking?
I couldn't believe Oswald could do something like that. He was a Marine, but he wasn't a killer. He was a dedicated American. He wanted to do things right.
I mean, people around you.
There's something more to this than what meets the eye.
People around you probably knew that you had been friends with him. Did they question you at all right afterwards? It was a very confusing time for the country.
Interestingly, I went to the FBI a few days later and told them that I was in the Marine Corps with Oswald, and he and I roomed together. I gave him a brief statement there that they didn't question me very thoroughly either. By no means did I get a thorough investigation from the local FBI. So which gives me additional suspicion that Oswald was working undercover.
So you think that he does have a dishonorable discharge right now, currently, that's his status?
I think that that is a disgrace to a national hero. I'll call him a hero.
And that it should be at least
And he should receive an honorable discharge. It should be redone to receive an honorable discharge. And his name has been disgraced enough by some unscrupulous people in this country, and it's a great shame that he was working for this country for so long and so dedicated, and he suffered so much because of his true honorable feelings, and it wasn't his intent to have Kennedy killed.
And as someone who has Marine paraphernalia all throughout your house, you don't say that lightly, do you? I mean, because a Marine would look at somebody who was dishonorably discharged as
He was a
being...
Marine. He was a Marine. I would serve with him, and I would feel my back covered completely if he and I were together. And I would protect his back with my life too. No, he was a Marine. Marine Corps has a motto, "No man left behind." And what disappoints me greatly is they are leaving Lee Harvey Oswald behind. They know he was a dedicated, good, true Marine. And why haven't they helped clear his name and give him the honorable discharge that he deserves? I have that question, and it has been bothering me for years. I would like someone to give me a good answer, an honest, professional answer.
Please, listen to this wonderful lady next.
I don't know if I'm the lady, my name is Angelina Nobile. I'm from New Orleans. More than New Orleans, I'm from down below, is what we called it. St. Bernard and Plaquemines Parish. Leander Perez country. My father started working for Leander Perez. My father was a JAG. When he got out of the service, he was looking to be a lawyer. And so he went down below and he talked to the judge. And my father was Italian. He was a Northern Italian, not a Siciliano, which meant he could never belong to the mafia. He was also a Freemason, 32nd degree Freemason. Very important, Leander Perez was a Freemason. Freemason goes back many centuries in our family. Now that may not mean anything to you, but the Freemasons and the Mafia work together. Okay, and the Freemasons provided protection so that the syndicate could carry on their illegal activities. And most of the Freemasons, if you were a Shriner and you had to go 32nd degree, you were either a politician, a doctor, somebody with power. If you needed somebody knocked off, they'd go to the mafia. So they worked in tandem. It's like that in Italy, it's like that in America. They just brought it over here. My father was the age of Leander Perez, Judge Perez's sons, Lee Jr. and Challen. And he became the Italian connection, I guess you would say, because they down below in those two parishes, many of the people were illiterate. They were shrimpers. They had oysters. They were trappers. It wasn't very many people when my dad moved down there, and there wasn't a lawyer. So he became Judge Perez's lawyer. He told him all his secrets. He became his confidant. He became his insurance policy. And as well, Judge Perez became my daddy's insurance policy, because he started doing things that probably were questionable. I guess I'm a little upset because I'm breaking a promise that I made to my father. See, I didn't know any of this was happening. I knew we lived a mysterious life. Believe me, it was mysterious. He would always tell me, ascoltami bene, acqua in bocca, means you listen to me well, don't let the water come out of your mouth, which meant you don't talk about anything that goes on in this house. You don't talk about anything we talk about. Nobody comes into this house, not your friends, not anybody. And when we leave you alone, because they didn't trust people to stay with us, there was nobody to stay with us. He showed us how to use a gun at a very early age, and he said, shoot them. So 3 little girls, I was the youngest of 3. And that was our instructions. Anybody comes through the front door, you shoot them. I thought I could do it, you know. I sure have wanted to shoot somebody. Well, my father, like I say, I left home when I was 15 and a half and went to LSU in Baton Rouge. I did not really like living down in the parish. Everybody knew me as the daughter of Judge Noble. They Americanized it to Noble. My mother said I could pass. I said, pass for what? She said, white. So she said, don't tell the college boys you're Italian. So I left, but things started to get bad down in the parish. But before I left, I knew that my father had changed. And I don't know exactly when he changed. He became tormented, I know that. But when the president was killed, it was the Thanksgiving holidays. The courthouse was closed. By that time, he was a district attorney. And so he wasn't at work. And we were at home, and so I kept the TV on. My 2 older sisters, they weren't interested, but I was always interested, you know. And so finally, when Ruby shot Lee, my father just about exploded. And he went over the TV, shut it off, he started cursing. And of course, as a child, I thought he was cursing at me. He said, don't turn that TV on again. It's lies, it's all lies. And I'm thinking, what, Kennedy's not dead? You know, but I knew not to approach him when he was like that, you know. So I just didn't fool with it. I just kind of put it out the back of my mind, because he exploded a lot. And he was genetically loaded for it, you know. So what you gonna do? You just, you know. And by the way, I am too, so. So, but his personality changed, and he was always telling me, be careful, be careful, be careful. Watch your back, watch your back. We couldn't date. We couldn't, in fact, nobody could even come into the parishes unless they checked it with my father, or with Leander Perez, or with one of the sons. You couldn't even live in the parish. Hey, we're talking about rabid, white supremacists here. That's what we're talking about. You had to have that mindset. You could be Italian, you could be Islanos, which is what Judge Perez was, which he came from the Canary Islands. You could be Polish, but you couldn't be black. Okay. Now we did have an enclave of African Americans that had inherited a large plantation, but Judge Perez, who was a dictator, an absolute dictator, he was like the big papa for all the people. He would not let them have running water, any kind of sewage, system, anything. And they didn't get that till 1978. They couldn't vote. They beat them up. It was really, we were living in a different era. They were trying to protect of course my dad was Italian. He didn't live, he didn't know what a plantation was. He knew what a chestnut was, but he didn't know what a plantation was. So this was all foreign, but he wanted a job. He did not know what he was getting himself into. So after the assassination, I was about 11. He started to get very paranoid. He did know very well, and I've met them all too, Carlos Marcello, Jim Garrison, Guy Bannister, Sal Licharta. I could go through the list of them.
Jack Rowley.
Jack Ruby.
Rowley.
Oh yeah, Jack Raleigh. Oh God, Lord. There was always a turf battle. They were trying to get Judge Perez out because he was doing some really illegal things, but he was entrenched. Okay. Well, Freemasons will not go against another Freemason. You take an oath, and it's just like the Italians, the mafia. They don't turn on each other, usually. So my father was sort of caught, okay? This man gave him a livelihood to bring up 3 daughters in a very nice style. But I got sort of suspicious something was going on when I went to college. He didn't want me to come home very often. I thought, well, that's odd after telling me, watching me like a hawk. So when I graduated one day from LSU. The next day I was living in Athens, Greece for a whole year. And I thought, what's this about? He needed me to be out of the parish. My other 2 sisters were married and gone. He was worried about me. Now, it wasn't so much because of the president being assassinated. MLK was involved in this as well. He knew where all the bodies were buried. And as long as that old man was alive, not my old man, but Judge Perez, my daddy was okay. But when he died, and he died a year after MLK was assassinated, my daddy's protection went away. And believe me, he knew it. He told me the story. He had heart surgery, and he thought he was going to die. So he purged himself to me. He took the monkey off of his back and put a gorilla onto mine. And I stayed with him for 3.5 months in the hospital. And at night, he would just talk and talk and talk. And I thought, I wrote it down as soon as he would go to sleep. But I thought I was finished with it. He said, keep the water in your mouth. I never told my sisters, I never told anybody. And I promised him that I wouldn't. 2 years later, he found a way to take himself out of his misery. He was tormented. I was happy for him, but I missed him. And he left a lot of things for me that I did not find until 2 years ago. And he absolutely, without a doubt, said Lee Harvey Oswald was innocent. In fact, Lee Harvey Oswald's cousin was my dentist. He knew of Lee Harvey Oswald, had asked my dad if he could find him a job. He said something to the effect that he stuttered a little. I never heard him, that's just what he said. He may have been nervous because my daddy was kind of imposing. But he absolutely said it was horrible to have to keep the secret, not be able to say anything, because that was the only way he could protect his family. Because if he told anything, we'd all be blown away, for sure. But I figure he must have told me this, and I told Judith, she said, would you come and say something to her? And I said, oh, not only no, but hell no. But she's a very persuasive woman. I just happened to write her a little note, and I said, if it means anything, I know he's innocent too. Well, boy, she grabbed on that like a crab. And here I am. Like I say, I promised my daddy I wouldn't tell, and I've told. I don't like the feeling, but I gotta live with it, but I do feel good that I can say my daddy absolutely knew for sure that Lee Harvey Oswald was completely innocent of this. He had nothing to do with it. In fact, he liked Kennedy. So, I guess that's all I have to say is that that's what I came to say.
Have more witnesses, that a couple are ill. I was also going to speak, but I don't think I have to. And maybe we can come back next year and get some more of this. If you want to hear more, you can do it again next year. Come on, say you want it. Yeah. See, here's the thing. Some of us hear the fact that, well, you're at a conference, this is not scholarly enough. You're getting the witnesses, you're getting the information, and you're not getting theory, you're not getting debate, in which you get the real thing. And this is what it's about. You're part of it now. Thank you. Oh, yes, yes. This man knows more in the little finger than most others know in their whole life about the Kennedy assassination. This is the wonderful Edgar Tatro, whatever.
I never thought you'd say Tatro. I never thought.
Sorry, I just realized it wrong.
Okay, I just had one little anecdote to tell about this woman's story. I don't usually talk about this, but it's something that I've just kind of put together on my own. And I always used to say to a few private friends, I would say that there are basically four common denominators in the assassination. Number one, there are a lot of homosexuals in this case. In fact, that's why Garrison called it a homosexual thrill kill, which might be hyperbole, but there's a certain amount of that. There are an awful lot of gay folks that were involved in this capacity, or alleged gays and so forth. Number two, a lot of naval intelligence, which doesn't get much attention. Number three, all the big boys played high-stakes poker games together. And a lot of the decisions that were made in back rooms and bars and so forth, playing high-stakes poker games. And number 4, a lot of Masons. And the thing I wanted to add was that almost all of the high echelon folks in the Texas connection were all Masons. And I want to add one more ingredient to it. There's a kind of overlapping of Masons, John Birch Society, Minutemen, White Citizens Council, Ku Klux Klan, and other extreme right-wing groups like that. And a lot of them were like members of all of them, so to speak. And the most important thing I think that the lady said was that code of silence. They were masters at not snitching and not talking, and they were very, very careful about that. And one time I was at the Adolphus Hotel several years ago, and there was a man there, an older man, who's written a couple of books on the subject, Texas-oriented stuff. And I said this to him, these 4 common denominators. And when I mentioned the Masons, he looked at me and angrily said, "Hey, I'm a Mason." And I looked right at him, I said, "Well, then you know what I'm talking about." And he looked at me and said, "Yeah."
Okay, we're having a break now for a couple minutes and check our sound. And